Yeehaw! You're still here. I love it. It's now my pleasure to introduce Steve Boland, who is the Chief Administrative Officer at Bank of America. Steve? Thanks for doing this. I am a CEO and you are a CAO. What do you do? What does that mean? What does a Chief Administrative Officer do? And then I'll explain what I do.
The question everyone's asking. It's a series of staff functions that range from public policy to ESG, global corporate security, all of our external and internal communications, and then the most fun part of my job, according to my kids, which is I'm responsible for global sports sponsorships.
Whoa, that might be the coolest part of your portfolio.
There it is.
What does that mean? What do you do with that?
We have everything from, I just got back from Augusta National, where we sponsored the Augusta National Women's Amateur Tournament. We saw the most amazing young women golfers compete on the grounds of Augusta National, which was neat. And, we support, sports and teams and events and communities around the world.
And do you get to pick which sports, which teams, which events you get engaged in?
So what we try to do, and this is kind of our global but local reach, is we have our local market presidents in the U.S. and our country executives outside the U.S., and we ask them to tell us which are the most important ones for us to partner with, and that's how we go about it. Then my team puts it together.
Amazing. Steve has a very broad portfolio, as he just described. Fill in the blank. At this moment, my biggest obsession is blank.
Wow, biggest obsession. It is really about how do we move on and get back to normal. And that covers our employees, getting them back to the office, getting them comfortable about getting back to normal. It's about our clients, getting them past the pandemic period. It's about our communities. It's really about how do we all get back to normal.
Let's talk about the employee part of that equation. How many people work at the bank, roughly?
A little over 205,000.
That's a lot. And they're scattered around the world. The pandemic hits, like everyone else. Everybody's remote. That's a big army you got to move around. And you've got a big banking system to keep going. How do you think about that? What are the more unorthodox steps that the bank took to make sure that you had employees who could do the job they needed to do, but do it from anywhere?
Yeah, you think about that. Like you said, you've got a couple 100,000 people and we immediately say, let's everybody go home. You've now got a job to do. You've got to get everybody laptops. You've got to make sure they've got the internet access and capability and screens, not to mention taking care of health and safety, making sure they had PPE, masks, sanitizer, gloves, all the things that they need to keep themselves and their families healthy. And then you had the work that we needed to do. We still need to help take care of our clients, right? And so it's whether our clients who needed to understand how they could access digitally what they might have come into a financial center and done physically before, or working on the administrations program through the Small Business Administration. And I galvanized 15,000 people around the world to process 500,000 PPP applications and deliver $35 billion in loans to our small business clients. Every day we were figuring it out what we needed to do next.
Well, and when we send people home, we're not really dealing with regulators. You've got huge parts of your company that are dealing with massive layers of regulation and therefore regulators. Were there parts of the company that were harder to figure out and sort of strategize on how I can move this into a remote environment?
It's really kind of less about the regulators. We have an extraordinary infrastructure to support the control environment. And it really was about how do our clients know what we're doing for them. So for instance, in our financial centers, some of our financial centers weren't going to be able to be open, but we still need to be able to serve clients, or quickly pivoting to the fact that maybe we could, in the height of the pandemic, we had dedicated hours for some of our most vulnerable clients, some of our older clients, and giving them dedicated time to come in. It was that kind of thing that we were really kind of working through.
You have been with the bank for a long time, and you used to be president of retail, am I correct? And now you've got this portfolio that sort of sits atop everything. What's the difference between being a president at a company like yours versus being a chief administrative officer?
Yeah. So every day as president of the retail bank, my job was driving that retail business, taking care of 35 million clients. Every day to day, it's how do I support all 8 lines of business around the world? It was a very domestic-based job, and my job is more global today. Also, if you think about some of the work that we do, I just think about some of the work we're doing, around the environment and climate change, and we're looking to support a just transition to a low carbon economy. So it's how do we support getting $250 billion in sustainable financing, which is what we just announced this week that we did last year.
Right.
And I partner with our colleagues to be able to make something like that happen, or work that we did around racial equality and economic opportunity, putting together a program with my former retail colleagues to have $15 billion commitment to affordable housing. It ranges, and every day is incredibly different in terms of what we're working on.
You're about 6 months into the new gig, right? Mm-hmm. Is part of it hard power versus soft power? If I'm running a line, you're responsible for a P&L, right? And you're responsible for a very specific number. Now you're not, but you have to cut across to everything. And does it require a different set of skills, a sort of a softer hand or a more diplomatic approach to doing your job?
Now, actually, it's interesting. I think the difference now, I have a reason that I can just put my nose in anywhere. I touch every part of the company, and I support Brian Moynihan, our CEO, in every part of the company. But here's an interesting thing about how we're organized. So we in the United States have 93 market presidents. They run each of the markets.
Yep.
And what that enables us to do is be this huge global company that can be incredibly powerful locally. So if you take right here in Washington, D.C., Larry DeRita, who is the president for Washington, D.C., we had an effort. We wanted to get all of our employees to get vaccinated against COVID-19 and get boosted. And we'd also been talking with our community partners about dealing with issues around food insecurity. So we launched this plan, and we said we'll give $100 to a food bank for every employee who got boosted. The way that manifests itself, right here in Washington, D.C., we ended up, I think we donated like $150,000 to Capital Area Food Bank, but that was part of $10.6 million that we were able to do across the country. Right. It's galvanizing those 93 market presidents to bring all of our capabilities to bear in each and every community we participate in.
If I'm one of the 200,000 plus working at the bank now, do I have to come in every day?
We want you in every day. So we've been inviting our employees back in, and we remind everybody. It's interesting, by the way. You've got a group of employees who couldn't wait until we invited them back in because they missed that collegiality, they missed that opportunity to interact. And then we've got some that it took a little bit because it's a little odd after 2 years of not coming in. But we want everybody back in. We are a work from office culture, and we think that you get a lot out of collaboration, you get a lot out of mentorship, and the collegiality we all get being back together.
What if I don't? I say no.
Well, what we're talking to employees about is we need you to come back into the office. A separate question is this question that I think industries are talking about around work-life flexibility. So we're getting everybody back in, and we're engaging with our employees around that topic. But we need employees who have a job that require them to be back in the office. We've asked them to come back in, and we're seeing them coming back.
When you're talking to Brian, your boss, do you ever worry that will put you at a competitive disadvantage? We had the founder of Bolt up here, an hour ago, saying you can work from wherever. You only have to work 4 days a week. That sounds pretty cushy to some compared to what it might be like at the bank. Do you worry about that requiring or sort of, pretty heavily nodding and nudging people to come into the office that might scare off some talent that you want?
No, I don't. And the important thing is, this is not a binary question about work from home or work from the office. I think the reason people come to work at Bank of America and are like me, who've been here for 27 plus years, I told you, earlier, is because of everything that we have to offer, right? We have, we announced, back, I can't remember, it was in 2020, we went to a $20 minimum wage, said we're going to 25 by 25, and we're raising the minimum wage $1 each year. We have great policies for maternity and paternity leave. Our lowest paid employees haven't seen increases in their healthcare premiums in a decade. It's all of those pieces that make it a great place to work. Our employee networks, which encourage people to come together. And I'll tell you, yesterday I did a town hall in Charlotte, and we had people back together in an auditorium one of the first times when we had a chance to talk to them about the company. Not only was the auditorium full, we offered some lunch after. You couldn't get people to separate and go back because it was like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in 2 years and I want to catch up. And so we know that happens once you just kind of get over the hump and get back. So we actually think it's an advantage in terms of the culture of our organization and what it's meant for so many years and for so many years more.
We've spent time with Brian over the years, feel like we have a good read on him. Larry Dorita, who runs the operation around here, have a good read on him. Tell the audience, like, what is the Bank of America culture? Like, what makes it different working at BOA versus JPMC or any other sort of institution or other company that you've worked with over the years?
Yeah. So, everyone has what is their values and what have you, and what's their purpose. We have ours, which is helping make the financial lives of our clients better through the power of every connection. And our values come back to when I talk about working together. It is about delivering together, acting responsibly, trusting in your teammates. But what I think makes this place special is who we are at our core in terms of how we help our communities. Brian talks about the genius of the and. He talks about the ability to be able to deliver for our shareholders, for our clients, and for our communities. And that's what we're doing. And so it is something that, as simple as, the notes I got from people when we announced the giving that we were going to do to support victims from the conflict that's happening between Russia and Ukraine right now, and employees of Ukrainian descent reaching out and saying, thank you for doing this, allowing them to be able to match. We dropped our minimum match to $1, plus we gave $1 million to help with that. It is what we do in terms of, I talked about the food bank and what we're doing, our commitment to environmental, our partnership with organizations like Special Olympics. I think it's all of those that make the fabric of who we are. And then, of course, what we do every day for clients, right? We're the largest small business lender, largest consumer bank. We deliver every single day for clients, and our employees get excited about that. Even that Paycheck Protection Program. And I ask people to work virtually around the clock, holidays, weekends, what have you. I was getting notes from people saying thank you. Why? Because what they saw was we cared about helping small business owners get to the other side. And that's what they bought into, was the spirit and fabric and culture of this company.
Part of your portfolio is overseeing diversity, equity, inclusion, and a lot of efforts related to that internally and externally at the bank. And talk a little bit about what works. Like, there's been a lot of, everyone's obsessed with this topic. I think every company says that they care a lot about it. I think most are sincere when they say it. But what does it mean to you? And how do you think the bank approaches it differently? Or how, in your new role, do you approach it differently?
Yeah. Well, so, you have the work that we do around racial equality and economic opportunity. We do that in terms of housing, in terms of health, in terms of jobs, schools, and education. But when you start to talk about this topic, diversity, I serve as a vice chair for our Global Diversity and Inclusion Council. Our chairman and CEO, Brian Moynihan, serves as chair. There's a reason that's important, because that means that you set the tone from the top. And so, when we talk about representation, the fact that that he chairs this community, this council. The second being that you look at the representation in our boardroom, on our executive management team, throughout our company. We strive very hard to reflect the communities that we serve. And Brian has been passionate about, in our quarterly business reviews, holding each of us accountable, report out what we're doing around that. And so it's that passion from the top that really helps drive it.
Steve, as we wrap here, I think everybody in the audience, at least the physical audience here, is from the DC area. We're about to have an interview with the mayor. What's like the one kind of new cool thing that the bank's doing in DC that we should all be aware of?
Yeah, well, we just announced today an investment here, $39 million to create more affordable housing units. We've been looking at issues in Southeast and Southwest DC, $1.5 million in philanthropic gifts to create the first elevated public park and bridge to connect communities. And we think it's things like that where you bring philanthropy, you bring the ability to invest, you bring the ability to lend, that helps us be able to invest in communities. Again, global but local.
You nailed the landing. Thanks, Steve Boland. Appreciate it.